All right. Everyone ready? Good afternoon and welcome to the Aspen Institute. You're welcome. On behalf of the Aspen Institute Community Strategies Group and the Rural Development Innovation Group, I want to thank you for joining us today for this, which is the seventh in our America's Rural Opportunity Lunchtime Series. This is also the first America's Rural Opportunity session of 2018, and the very first that's taking place in the Aspen Institute's brand new offices. We moved at the end of December. So for those of you who are live streaming, it's a new, I don't know if it looks different to you, but it does to the rest of us. How's that? I am Janet Topolsky. I'm Executive Director of the Community Strategies Group here at the Aspen Institute. And Aspen CSG, which is what we call ourselves, what we do is we connect, motivate, and equip leaders at the community level across the country that are really trying to build more prosperous regions and advance people living on the economic margins at the same time. Since 1985, we've been around and we do about 75% of our work in rural America. Aspen CSG partners with the Rural Development Innovation Group to organize the America's Rural Opportunity Series. RDIG, as we call that, is a group of 15 seasoned practitioners who are doing deep economic development work in rural America from all across the country. We launched RDIG in mid-2016, and the aim of RDIG, of the Rural Development Innovation Group, is to lift up a rural opportunity agenda, what is working in rural, and share innovation and innovative approaches that are happening in rural America. We want to help understand what's working and what isn't and why. And what we also want to do is to help public and philanthropic organizations understand how to more effectively invest in rural America to achieve enduring and lasting outcomes. Today, I am happy to say from the Rural Development Innovation Group we have in the room somewhere, we have Connie Stewart, who's head of the California Center for Rural Policy from Humboldt State University. She's sitting in the back of the room. We always have some RDIG members available, and she's also tweeting, and she's also taking in your tweets so that we can have everyone who's live streaming ask questions. Today's session, as you all know, is focusing on rural opportunity youth. And opportunity youth, which are also called disconnected youth across the country, refer to people from the age of 16 to 24 who are not in school and are also not employed. We're going to hear more data about opportunity youth in a bit from our data partners at the Carsey School of Public Policy at the University of New Hampshire. But I want to mention that we're very pleased for this session to have collaborated with two partner programs at the Aspen Institute. The Center for Native American Youth is in the room, a little shout out there, and also especially the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund of Aspen's Forum for Community Solutions. So what I'd like to do right now is quickly introduce my Aspen colleague, Monique Miles, who is director of the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund of the Forum and who will offer some perspective on the importance of focusing on opportunity youth. Monique?
Thank you, Janet, and good afternoon, everyone. As Janet shared, my name is Monique Miles, and like many people at the Aspen Institute, I have several roles, including Deputy Director of the Aspen Institute Forum for Community Solutions and Director of our National Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund. Our work at the Forum for Community Solutions supports communities to solve their most pressing challenges using various models of collaboration, including collective impact. We partner with philanthropy and community-based leaders to document effective practices and share and disseminate those learnings at the national level. In 2013, we launched the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund here at the Aspen Institute, and to date, we have made more than $12 million in regrants to 24 community-based partners to improve education and employment outcomes for young people who are defined as opportunity youth. In collaboration with our 24 community grantee partners in our network, we have partnered with a suite of different sectors, including philanthropy, the corporate sector, the K-12 system, the post-secondary system, and the justice system, just to name a few of the partners on the ground. But most importantly, we have partnered with Opportunity Youth themselves to design community-wide agendas that are aimed at breaking multi-generational poverty and supporting young people to get on sustainable paths for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. Since our inception, we have always funded in rural and tribal communities in addition to urban places. This is in part because at the Forum for Community Solutions, we have core values that guide our work, including and most critically, equity, inclusion, and justice. We know that all communities do not receive equitable amounts of funding, and this number begins to change dramatically when you look at investments in rural and tribal places. At the same time, and equally as critically, we know that there are great disparities in the disconnection rates of youth in rural communities. So what we know nationally is that there are 4.9 million opportunity youth. This number estimates to approximately 1 in 8 young people who are currently out of school and out of work. Of these numbers, we know that about 14.2% of youth, the youth population, reside in urban places. However, this number jumps to 20.3% when we look at rural communities. So the disparities are great, and our work is critical. As we consider the progress of our country, the health of our communities, and the role young people play in driving toward a vibrant and inclusive future for all of us, rural matters in critical ways. So with this background and context, we are so thankful to Janet and to her program and to all of our panelists here today, but I have to especially call out 2 of our grantee partners from our rural network, including Mabel and Deontay from Greenville and Kathy Moxon, who has worked with the Del Norte community, and thank them for being here with us today. We hope you all enjoy the program.
Thank you, Monique. And just finally, before we start, we want to acknowledge organizations that have provided support for this series. And I want to start today with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which has offered support for today's session, building on their long-time support to address factors that help or hinder rural families from achieving economic success. Our Aspen partners at the Forum also help support today's event, as I mentioned in the past, also contributing to the series overall. We have a number of funders of the Rural Development Innovation Group, the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities, the Lohr Foundation, the Northwest Area Foundation, the Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation, Encourage Community Foundation, and the Northern Forest Center and Aspen Community Strategies Group ourselves. Now, a couple logistics. Handouts. If you're in this room, handouts that will be the slides as well as a visual refer to on your chairs. If you're live streaming, there are links to all of these handouts that are going to make it easier for you to see some of the stuff that were in the email that Clifford Deaton sent you this morning. So you can access all those handouts that are on the chairs today if you go back to that email. If you want to share your thoughts on today's discussion or ask questions, please use hashtag rural innovation. That's one we always use, hashtag rural innovation. If you want to learn more or get updates or share your own stories, visit us at as.pn/rural or follow us on Twitter at Rural Innovators. So with all of that, let's get started. The way our session will run is that our moderator is going to queue up the opening data and each of our panelists have to present and offer, and then she's going to ask the group some of her probing questions. We'll have time at the end for some questions and comments from people here in the room and from the live stream audience. So start sharing your questions whenever you have them, and we'll collect them and then start asking them later in the program. Once again, that's hashtag rural innovation. And I want to say to all of you who are live streaming, you want to stay till the end, and to those of you in the room, because we're going to have a real treat at the very end. We didn't know we were going to have this treat until about 45 minutes ago, but we're going to have a real treat at the end. So now to really get started, let me introduce Kathy Moxon, who's going to be our moderator. Those of you who have come to these sessions before know sometimes we have journalists and sometimes we have experts, and this time we got an expert. So she seems to be unclear about that, but So Kathy has deep roots in rural. She lives in Humboldt County, which, go to San Francisco, turn right and drive 6 hours, and you're in Humboldt County. And it's one of the most beautiful places in the country, in my book. She's currently director of USA Rural and Native Initiatives for Youth Build USA, which she'll explain to you in a minute. She advises, as Monique said, the Del Norte County and Tribal Lands Opportunity Youth Initiative. She's helped lead Red Coast Rural Action, which is a multi-county effort working with leaders trying to improve the local economy. She served as chairperson for the California Stewardship Network. I first met her back in 2000 and 2001 when she was the very creative director of community strategies for the Humboldt Area Foundation, a community foundation. And just to give her a little bit of rural cred, I want to mention, besides a number of youth who have lived with Kathy over the years, she reported to me that she's now down to 1 rooster, 2 geese, 5 ducks, and 2 dogs. So, Kathy, I will turn it over to you.
I'm whittling down the population at my house, and thank goodness. Made traveling challenging. Good afternoon, and I appreciate seeing you all here. You know, I think about Opportunity Youth a lot because it occupies a lot of my thought process. And just for a couple of reasons, I think it's important to think about Opportunity Youth. One is that when you look at the reports that quantify the cost of having Opportunity Youth in our communities, they estimate both the fiscal and social cost together is about $50,000 per youth per year in both actual costs and lost economic opportunity based on their disconnection to both education and work. In Del Norte County, that translates to $5 that they could replug into their economies if they could activate those young people and bring them back in. So it is a serious problem. But I think the panelists will agree that one of the other things is this is the future of leadership in our communities. And every leader in a rural community is visible and matters. And so to bring these young people in and spur them on, get them networked, and make them our next community leaders is so critical in the work we do. And I think they'll all agree with me. So I'd like to introduce our panelists, and then we'll launch into what I hope to be a vibrant conversation and come out with some really pragmatic ideas about dealing with youth in our communities. So first, I'd like to introduce, and I will come back to him again, Andrew Schaefer. Andrew's with the Carsey Institute at the University of New Hampshire. Next we have, I'm going to work this direction, I think. Next we have Shauna Campbell-Daniels. Shauna's with the Coeur d'Alene tribe in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Deontay White is with Mississippi Action for Community Education. We call that MACE. You'll hear MACE, Mississippi, I'll say it one more time, Mississippi Action for Community Education. Mabel Starks is also with MACE in Greenville, Mississippi. And we have Karen Jacobson. Karen Jacobson is the Executive Director of the Randolph County Housing Authority in West Virginia, out of Elkins. So welcome my panelists. And while we have some experts on the ground, I think we'll start with grounding ourselves in some data. So we'll start with Andrew. Why don't you kick us off to get a better understanding from a data perspective of opportunities?
Great, thanks. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm, really happy to be part of an event like this, and I'm grateful that you guys will hopefully, well, at least Aspen thinks that you'll. My talk is titled, pretty simply, Rural Opportunity Youth Across the Nation, 2016. This isn't going to be a, profile of this population. I've picked out just a few indicators here to just kind of ground us a little bit. Things that I think are important, things that stood out to me. Some basic demographic and economic characteristics of this population. First of all, I think it makes sense for you guys to know what I'm talking about. So I often use the term opportunity, youth, and interchangeably. I might say disconnected once or twice. It's an accident if I do. I mean to say opportunity youth. But basically, it's the population age 16 to 24 who aren't currently enrolled in school and aren't working. That includes people who are actively looking for work, can't find it, and people who are not in the labor force either because for any number of reasons. Rural are just those living in the U.S. designated metropolitan area. It's a very broad definition of rural. These data come from the U.S. Census Bureau, American Community Survey from the previous year. So it's the most kind of updated data that we have on this population. So starting off right away, I want to just do a general overview of where are the opportunity youth. So this bar graph here shows the percent of the youth 16 to 24 who are opportunity, the percent that are not employed, and not in school. And I've broken it down by, metropolitan status or rural, suburban, city status, and I've also broken it out for the rural people kind of regionally across the United States. And we just reiterate some of the discussion we've already had that, somewhere around 14% of the rural youth are in this kind of opportunity youth or disconnected youth category, more common in rural places than in suburbs. And the fancy kind of tags down there just are, the way that the data set talks about suburbs, cities, and rural places. So when I talk about rural, I'm just talking about those, not or outside of kind of these designated metro areas. And, there's just a couple of highlights I want to mention here. New England and the Northeast in general seems to have the lowest rates of opportunity youth, and the South, kind of the entire swath of the American South and the Pacific region generally have the highest rates. You'll see there's a lot of overlap in those error bars. There's similar rates, but still substantially higher than in New England and the Northeast in general. This graphic shows the breakdown for the rural non-opportunity youth on kind of your left, and the rural opportunity youth on the right. Just a quick apology here. I know that the American population is really important, but just on average is such a small part of rural America that it wasn't really comfortable including them kind of as their own bar here. But that's not to say that there aren't huge pockets of Native American population in places. It's just when you look at national averages, it doesn't kind of show those numbers. Considered to be, these huge hubs of racial ethnic diversity, the opportunity youth are more likely to be in a racial ethnic minority group. Only about 63% of the rural opportunity youth are white, compared to about 74% of the non-opportunity youth. Moving along, I think a major resource that young people have is kind of the ability to live with parents and have this safety net and support system in place. And so, and this graphic here shows the of opportunity youth and basically non-opportunity youth, but I've split them out into those in school and those that are currently working across the United States and just in rural places. And in both, we find that the opportunity youth are more often living on their own, so not living with their parents for whatever reason. We can't use these data to figure out why, but I think it's important to highlight here that this really is a resource that is lacking in this population. Again, this might be for surprising findings. Again, these are broken out the same way, and the opportunity youth, the youth in school, and the working youth to kind of make comparisons here. But these are the percent that are married and the percent with children. And across the United States and in rural places, opportunity youth are far more likely than other to be supporting a family. Which is, I think, is really something really important to keep in mind when thinking about this group. This is, ratio of family income to poverty is kind of just a fancy way of talking about poverty. It's the blue bars there at the bottom are the percent that are poor. So the same categories as the last couple, the opportunity youth in school and those working. And we'll just focus on the rural here, just because the patterns are relatively similar, if not a little bit more pronounced in rural places. But 40% of the opportunity youth in rural places are poor, compared to a quarter and a little bit less than a fifth of those in school and those working. And if you go up just one data point to the percent whose total family income is between 100% and 199% of the poverty line, those are sometimes called the low-income population. You can kind of add that to the poor population and see that 2/3 are in this very precarious income category, far more than their other youth counterparts. This is educational attainment. So I did something a little bit different with this graphic, because the opportunity youth are already kind of selected based on whether or not they're in school. It didn't make a ton of sense to compare educational attainment between the opportunity of other youth, just because a lot of the other youth they have not finished high school yet, and the comparisons just get a little bit tricky. So instead I compare the youth in rural places to those in suburbs and cities, and we can see that in general the youth in rural places are less educated, kind of on average. And the one thing that I think is it's kind of secondary point with this graphic is that there are opportunity youth with college degrees, less so in rural places, but there are credentialed, presumably kind of with the proper skill set, and that can work, and just kind of probably just need to be matched for work among the opportunity youth in rural places. So that's really just kind of a quick overview of this population, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Andrew. There may be questions. If you have questions about his data, remember that we have the hashtag rural innovation, so we'll get to questions later. Thank you very much. Yeah. Great. So I just want to take an opportunity to introduce Youth Build, and the reason why I'm going to do that is 2 Youth Build programs. So I think Youth Build USA is a structured program that collects disconnected youth, works with them in education, job training, and adds a component of leadership and community service to that. Young people are there between 6 months and 9 months, credentials in construction, and while they're learning their construction skills and doing their community service, they're actually building affordable housing. And so that is a Department of Labor funded program, but not all Youth Build programs are funded by Department of Labor, but they do have for Youth Build programs. USA provides technical assistance. They're a national organization, technical assistance to Youth Build programs. And that's where I work, is with Youth Build and rural and native programs. So we're going to start with Karen Jacobson. Jacobson, remember, is with the Randolph County Housing Authority in West Virginia. And one of the things that just strikes me, Karen, well, I would like you to tell them about your place. Give us a little idea about your place. How Housing Authority actually got involved in a youth arena.
Right.
So.
Well, the Randolph County Housing Authority is a pretty non-traditional housing authority. It started in 1979, and it was started by some local residents who were helping senior homeowners fix up their houses. They did this for a few years, decided, well, we should have an entity. And why they didn't start a nonprofit, I don't know. But they thought, well, Housing Authority, we'll have police powers, eminent domain. And so we got launched. Years later, we started our one traditional HUD program, which is a rental assistance program. But I would say that the organization has continued to be pretty entrepreneurial, so very responsive to both opportunities and also needs in the community. Our mission is to promote strong and a healthy quality of life. So you'll see that the word housing is not in that first sentence of our mission. So it's pretty broad. We were one of the first for the funded Youth Build program under HUD when it was started about 22 years ago. We saw two kind of opportunities there. We were starting to build housing to address our aging housing stock. We thought this is a great resource, use young people to build affordable housing. But we also really wanted to work with the young people who were staying in our community. So like a lot of rural communities, our kids that are college bound tend not to come back. And opportunity youth, or disconnected youth, they're staying, and they're our future, and they're our future leaders. So to us, it seemed like a sort of a perfect combination. operating a program ever since. But I should back up and tell you a little bit about where we are in West Virginia. Central West Virginia. Any of you ever recreate in Thomas, West Virginia? Okay. So, if you got on 66 west and then on to 48, in about 3 hours, you'd be in our region. We work particularly in a 3-county, about 58,000 people. The town that we operate out of, Elkins, is 7,000 people, and it's the economic hub for 5 counties around it. So it's really very rural. The sort of industry drivers have been traditionally hardwood, and we have the Mon Forest out there west of you. It's about 900,000 acres in the Potomac Highlands. So hardwoods has been very big. Mining has also been a traditional part of our economy, which is pretty much gone now. The hardwood, of course, is boom bust and did bust during the recession. Is on its way back. But I'll tell you that the top employers in Randolph County are the public school system, Walmart, the hardwood flooring plant, and our local hospital, Davis Memorial Hospital. So a little bit about our demographic. As I said, our young people are leaving. We are finding that we're in the oldest part of one of the oldest states in the Union. And about 5 years ago, we did some research that really shone a light on our population 65 and older is doubling between the 2010 and 2030. And yet we have this working age population that is leaving. And so that got us really very concerned about a variety of things, housing for seniors, also like who will care for these seniors. And right about then, we were also, 15 of our Youth Build program, wondering what other opportunities we could provide in addition to construction. Great set of hard skills, but there aren't a lot of other jobs in construction that people were going into. So about half of our graduates would get a job placement there. It was kind of a mix of things that really didn't provide, we thought, wage opportunities. So we had an opportunity through our Department of Labor. Our Department of Labor grant offered the opportunity to apply for an alternative training, Construction Plus, they called it. And so we seized that chance and started med prep, or medical preparation for the medical field program. We were able to do that because we had started a relationship already with our hospital around senior housing and services in senior housing. And the hospital, our very strong employment partner. We started really by putting an advisory council of employers in the healthcare field and trainers in the healthcare field to come and talk about what are the jobs you were trying to fill, what kinds of training could our young people get to really get started. And we created a curriculum that put together some online curriculum, community college, job shadowing at the hospital, and volunteer program at Davis Memorial Hospital, and then like a 2-day personal care aid certificate training with a home care company. And it has been a great platform, now placing 15 to 20% of our cohorts each year in the healthcare field and at the hospital, but also in other healthcare companies. And the average wage is about 10, 15, which for us is, for our is as a good starting wage.
Wow.
I'll pause then. Get a drink? Yeah.
Well, that's great. One of the things I think about in rural areas, many rural areas have this pretty vibrant, for the rural areas, health industry, right? Yeah. And breaking into that industry can be very challenging. And sometimes when young people get into that industry, at the bottom and have a little trouble moving up from there. So what are you seeing as far as young people into that industry and their career after that?
Well, we're still kind of figuring out a lot of the trajectory part of the career. What has been really helpful is to be able to get into particularly the hospital through the volunteer program and to do sort of a little volunteering in the nutrition department, in the outpatient department, up in the surgical department. And they're kind of, you know, sometimes it's more like job shadowing and helping a particular, sometimes it's more kind of volunteering. You're helping someone fill out paperwork or, you know, find their room. And once they're there, they get connected to someone who takes an interest. And so it's a much more organic process than we started out with maps, you know, of where people could go. What we're finding is that, you know, people make relationships and get comfortable in certain areas, and then they jobs and go from there. One of the key things they're learning there, of course, is that's a lot of how you get a job. Is it's not just submitting an application, but it's talking to someone, being reliable, knowing someone on the inside, and really kind of working that and being proactive.
You said to me earlier today that one of your goals might be to bring a community or a technical college to your region because you don't have one. But didn't you mention actually have an educational partner? And tell me a little bit about that and how that happened.
We do. We have an educational partner in Maryland. We were not able to get our local community technical college really interested in what we had planned to do. So Garrett College in Maryland saw immediately made it easy for us to sign our kids up for 3 to 5 different online courses. You know, we're talking about human anatomy, medical records administration, you know, these kinds of things. And, you know, they would invoice us. They gave us a 10% discount, you know, provide a work-ready certificate for our young people. So it was a good partnership.
Great. Good. Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate that. Now we're at Mabel. Mabel, you're from Mace,
yes,
Mississippi. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are in Mississippi and your innovations that you have undergone in your program?
Okay, so first I'm going to slide up on this seat. One, because I'm passionate about what I do, and the other really is because I'm 5 feet tall.
She packs a bigger wall than 5 feet tall, I'll tell you.
I am really thankful to Janet for inviting us, and also very thankful to Monique and the Aspen Opportunity Youth Incentive Forum, which is a part of the work that we do and has allowed us to do at our agency and with our young people in our community. So thank you so much. Mississippi Action for Community Education, MACE, was founded in 1969 by Fannie Lou Hamer, Amzie Moore, Annie Devine, all those really powerful people who believe that African Americans deserved more. They just had opportunities. They needed the education and economic advancement. So MACE was created to make sure that those things happen in a 7-county area. And we're still very committed and true to that. And under that, and this is done through housing, entrepreneurial, and education and job training. Specifically, I'm going to talk about our Youth Build program and our Opportunity Youth program, Go Youth, which Aspen funds, and we partner with Rural Lists to make these opportunities available for our young people. I'm going to lather with data because that's really not my strength. I really like to talk about programs. I'm going to let master, but just a little bit of the impact is made in our community with the opportunities that are available. In a small rural community, 2,000 people, 90% of our young people graduate our program, and they graduate with GEDs, credentials that can take them on to a higher paying job. But 85% of our students also get placed in employment immediately after graduation. Within a year after from our program, 100% of them eventually find jobs. It takes some just a little bit longer to get it right. So how does that happen? What's the magic sauce that makes that happen? For us, and what I realize is building a community. We take away the word program. We invite them to come in, and we challenge them with that question: what do you want to be when you grow up? First question Deontay was asked. You know, And really, when you were 5 years old, what did you tell people you wanted to be when you grow up? And it takes a while. We ask them to close their eyes and think about that. And after they do that, and they tell us, and we listen to every single person in the room, we realize that it's not too late, that that can happen. We bring them into a community where they are held accountable for their actions. You have to be on time. You have to be respectful to yourself and to other young people in the community. You have to work hard. You have to make this happen. And that it can happen. And it will happen if you're willing to commit. And we put people around them that reinforce these things every day. They make sure that those things that are have been challenged with, because they're placed in a system where they're having to deal with things that I don't think that at 18 or 19 or even 24 years old that I would have been able to deal with. Taking care of a parent, taking care of myself, being responsible for a household, and or just wondering, where am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to take care of a child when I'm 18 years old? What do I do as a mother? So we have a counseling segment that's built around the entire community. Young people talk to someone one day, but they also within their group and within their peer group, within their safe zone, because Youthville becomes a safe zone, they can talk and they can work those issues out among themselves as well. And then our young people, most of all, realize that they are part of a community. They go to the local Board of Supervisors meetings, the City Hall meetings, and we teach them how to use the power that's in their 100% of our students who come to Youthville are active voters. Not just registered voters, they are active voters. And we teach them about the process. We teach them about what's important to you in your community. Meetings to ask the questions, and we go with them. Right now, we are very proud to have the youngest poll workers in the state of Mississippi, and they are there. Anytime there's an election, they are there and they're ready to serve. They're ready to be on task. So I will go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Mabel, it's pretty amazing that in your community, you say you get to 100% employment for eventually. It doesn't all happen immediately.
Exactly.
But can you tell us a little bit about some of those employer relationships that you have had that paved the way to get to work?
Yes, and most of these happen because of the young people. When people see that you're successful, and the young people themselves, we wear purple. They have a purple uniform shirt out, and they are proud to wear these shirts even when it's not program time, which gets me. You can weekend in the community and they have on their Youthville t-shirt. And people in the community have watched our young people. They've watched the service that they've done in the community, and employers will come to us and have come to us. One of our major employers is Dollar General Warehouse, where they were looking for people to work. They couldn't find workers in their factory that starts off very well in our area. I think starting at about between $12 and $15 an hour. So they came and they asked, do you have young people who would be willing or interested in working? And of course we did. And we promised them we send them young people who were ready. And we've had other relationships like that. But the other thing, Kathy, is that we've had to be creative in our placement, because we're in an area in the rural Mississippi Delta where the population is declining, and this declining, businesses are leaving. So in a situation like that, where are the jobs? With a lot of local restaurants, our young people are learning the skill. Tourism is big in Mississippi right now, along with all of the things around the blues and around heritage and the culture. And we're teaching our young people also about those opportunities, and they're working in the restaurant, they're working in the casinos, and wherever they go, they are some of the committed employees because they want it. And we don't go to our employers asking them for assistance to help our young people out. We go to them letting them know that we have a resource that can help them meet their needs. They employers, they need to produce. And we who can help them get to those goals.
Great. Good.
Okay. I am very happy to have with me one of the young people from our community who exhibits all of those qualities that I talked about and more, who is an example of taking advantage of an opportunity before you. And he's going to talk about a little bit about what brought you to Youthville and about your journey along the way.
Well, what brought me to youth is looking for an opportunity for myself to better and to learn about what it's all about having a job or getting where I want to go. It was a long journey because I was currently working at the hospital and I didn't have my education. So in my mind, when I went to Youthville, came to Youthville and left Youthville because I wanted my education. But when I came to Youthville, they had all these set rules of what you had to do. I'm here like I just want my education. I mean, what we gonna do? But Youthville wasn't all about that. It's about transformation. So I ended up leaving because I wanted it right now and went back to my job. And when I went back to my job, I was a hard worker. Thought I was just gonna move up, without my education, money. But it didn't happen like that because someone came on the job. They had all they high school diploma and make way and me was a supervisor of me, and that made me start thinking that I had to make a choice in my life that whether do I want to keep working and stay stuck in the same, or do I want to better my life? So I called youth buildings to come back. So when I did what they had to offer, and it was tough, because they had a morning opening, a motivation. Like they had you had to say a quote, anything my mind can conceive, my see, I would believe it. So then they had the 7 core values of leadership. You had loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, integrity, and personal courage, and honor credit. These are the words we live by every day. It was in our mind, but we wasn't in our heart yet. So that means we weren't loving it. We weren't following it back. So after a while, when you put it in your head over and over, it finally sinks in. To this day, I got it. I achieved my GED. I have, and I had job opportunities to welding companies, construction companies. I turned them down to work for youth and to help other youth reach their goals. That it's gonna be a hard journey, but you can still reach it. And then they had a song, Faith of the Heart, that we sung over and over. And then, we had to sing it with feeling, because if you didn't, just didn't believe it. And then this was my best decision of choosing Youth Build. And thank you.
I think one of the things we do know is that young people who transform their lives become a voice for other young people to transform their lives, and that can become a chain reaction, right? Which is why you're still at Youthville now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Mabel, one thing I know personally about your program, because I've known you for a while, is I want to swing you said about your main conversations. One is that it was unusual for a Youthville director to have relationships with merchants downtown. So could you tell us a little bit about developing those relationships downtown? And then the other one was that you talked about, for an example, youth working in restaurants. And I know in several cases, it was not just youth working in restaurants, but youth getting on that management track. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I am an advocate for young people wherever I go. So it's not unusual. So be wary if you talk to me after this meeting. So it's not unusual to look at our community and see our young people there. And the thing that used to just really incense me was that we talk about a need for filling positions or a need for things, and we ignore resources, the most powerful resource around us. Because show a young person opportunities, and it's really just the exposure. You have an army of energy and talent and skill that is there, and we weren't tapping into that. So we first had to be an example of it. So before I became CEO of the agency, I convinced my CEO to hire our young people in the agency of Mace, to put the young person on our board of directors at Mace, to listen to the young people and involve them. So we first had to become the example. But when we went out in the community to talk to people, as I'm talking to employers, you know, you have a position that's open. I have a young person who is perfect for this. And with us being in the community, we're getting to know people, we know what their skills are. And I have one restaurant that a young person who, and I like to tell this young lady's story. I just almost want to call her name, but I won't. I didn't get permission from her. I know she wouldn't mind. But this young lady came into Youth Bill, mother of two at the time. She was 7 miles from the program. This young lady walked to school first in a stroller, dropped her children off at daycare, walked to school, and was at the doors of the agency before the doors open every single day. And we, the young people, owned the community, so they were responsible for all of the maintenance. Whatever needed to be done is their home. So she was such a cleaner. She was always involved. She made sure that everything was on task. But academically, also a person who had to work a little bit harder. I realized she didn't get it, and she would often say, you know, Ms. Gales, you got to slow down. You're going too fast. I don't get it that fast. And she didn't have a problem with saying that. But she got her GED. She recently graduated. And I love going to the college graduations. I think I make some of the moms mad because I'm in the picture before they are. I recently went to her graduation where she graduated with her CNA, and she's planning on going back and getting an LPN. But more importantly, it's also she was married now 2 years, and her husband was also a graduate from Youthville, and they are now building their first home this year.
Wow.
I mean, these young people didn't see this. I know this more than you asked. The number, this opportunity. These are young people who didn't believe that these opportunities could exist for them. So continually tell them that lie when we ignore them, walk past them, and we don't engage them. It only takes one engagement to ask a young person, hey, what are you doing today? Are you in school? You ever thought about going back? That sparks something. And then leave a contact with that young person. To you, they're going to follow up on it. So that it takes a community to build a community, and we want a safe environment. Not everybody can come and speak to my young people. You got to look right in the community. So, I mean,
Thank you. That's
I know
great.
I went a little farther than you asked me, but
No, that's good. That's good. Great. Thank you. I think we'll go on to Sean Campbell Daniels, Sean, Coeur d'Alene tribe in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So one of the fun things about Sean in Coeur d'Alene, they're sort of working their way upstream, trying to prevent opportunity youth from in the first place. And I think that's an important thing for us to talk about as well.
Okay, so situate a little bit in place. The Coeur d'Alene tribe is in northern Idaho, and we're one of tribes in Idaho. We have about almost 2,500 tribal members, half of which live within the reservation. And about 12 years ago, our innovation journey kind of started when our Department of Education got a new director of education, Dr. Chris Meyer, and our tribal council had met with her and basically told her to take education watch. So her coming into the position, it was weighing really heavy on her how to be responsible for birth all the way through PhDs. And so in trying to manage what that might look like, she started very grassroots, meeting with our local school district, our public school, and some community members, including our wellness center director and some tribal members. And they literally gathered all of the probably about 3 to 5 hours worth of yearbooks schools and began putting together all of the different cohorts from 9th to 12th graders to be able to look at what our graduation rates were, and so on. And so that is how the education pipeline first began. And so now what we have, which I believe you all have a copy, is our education pipeline, which tracks not only Coeur d'Alene tribal members, those are the numbers in red at the top, but we track all of the students in our area, Native, from birth all the way through PhDs. So what this pipeline did was really in our community to identify some of the ruptures in that pipeline, which also in motion kind of pressure, so to speak, of the rest of our tribal departments and leadership to look under the rug, so to speak, to figure out what was happening in the community causing the ruptures in this pipeline. And so since that process, we've continued to strengthen this pipeline, and what has really been huge in the process is that we've strengthened our partnerships all across Idaho. We have our local universities that work with us to develop grant proposals and do research in areas that our community has identified. And then we also have found the gaps in services along that pipeline, and then we find grants that support the development of that pipeline. So for example, and especially with the opportunity age group, the 16 to 24, that has been one of our highest risk populations. And on our pipeline, we have a NACTEP grant.
Could you tell us what that is?
NACTEP is Native American Technical Education, programs. And is the program that serves the 2-year degrees technical. And that's our group that is risk. So once we get them GEDs, they're on, and we have a 92% retention rate in that program alone. Those are our community members who had dropped out of high school. Some received GEDs, some didn't, and were working in lower level positions and are now returning and getting their AA degrees, and most of them now are moving on to 4-year degrees. So so far, that's our most successful program. We're also seeing an increased number of the go-on rate straight from seniors in higher education.
Great. To explain a little bit, and I might have just missed this, that program that you sort of put in place with the the technical education program. They went from not GEDs. Does that meld GED training with AA? Is that a straight through where you have somebody who can come into the program without their GED? Pull them in through the.
So
Wow.
we start with the GED with the department. We have all of the services for them to get GED. And actually, to step back a little, what we did to incentivize that population into the program is we worked with our local universities. North Idaho College was specific to develop stackable certificate programs. So we looked at our highest workforce development, which was business administration, hospitality, because we have a local casino, and then natural resources. And so those students were able to see those small successes with one certificate, the next certificate, and then the third certificate, which, you know, once they saw that success, they seeing that this is possible, I can do this, and so they would keep going. So it was that certificate program that really pushed that movement, I think, along that pipeline.
Great. And what are you seeing as far as employment or employer partnerships in your community to help those young people? Or are you really just focused on that post-secondary education step?
Well, in the middle school, high school segment of the pipeline, we also have a with all of our local agencies summer internships. So we go through a whole process where our youth do resume writing, they go through interviews, and then they're placed within different departments around the tribe for about a month-and-a-half long paid internship. And then prior to going into their internship, they attend long leadership institute at Washington State University, preparation for them starting in their internships. And then usually once they're in an internship, for example, we have a couple students who are in our lake management department in the summer, and they've become so engaged in the different political climate around our water resource management in Idaho that they've been in that same summer internship for going 3 years now and are huge advocates.
Oh, that is great. I love to hear that. One of the things that reminds me is that there are subpopulations in our high schools who are more apt to become opportunity youth. That, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. As tribal members were not achieving at the same that other young people in even the high school or the elementary schools were. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that made you step in was that identification.
Yes, well, and for the tribe to be at the table and to have a stronger voice in education, because overall, as a tribe, we always talk about tribal sovereignty, and one of the first places, if you want to have true sovereignty and self-determination, it starts with education. And so we knew we had to be at the table and have a strong voice in what type of education we want for our children.
Great, good. It does. You're all very different organizations, and it reminds me that you have this opportunity youth population, and once they actually drop out of high school, there's no responsible for this population. It's nobody's job to pick this population and engage them on the road to becoming adults, contributing adults in the community. And so just the variety up here is very interesting, and maybe you could each talk about some of your maybe unusual partners who are part of your collaborations in your communities. So I'm going to give you just a second to think about those sort of unusual partners who are in your communities, because we have lots of people listening, I think, on the live stream who may think to themselves, I'm not the right that's not what I do. I said that at one time, didn't you, Karen? But just to encourage them about who are partners at the table, importance of what are the qualities to make a partner really come to the table in ways that make a difference. Karen, you mind starting there, and we'll.
Sure. We think of two parts that have been really critical for us. One's our city, our little city of Elkins, so population 7,000. So a lot of things that are going on with the city and with the nonprofits in the city that they need a little help with. And we have these young people that are also signed up as Corps volunteers. So I have them out engaging community service, also meeting prospective employers, and working hard to kind of put their mark out. And that partnership really started with a couple of projects where we were building new trash cans, but it leveraged into a year where we did not have federal funding for our program, and the director of the Parks and Rec extended a construction project for us, basically, that we could consent and earn funds for, keep our staff, and keep operating the program. So very, very key. They come to all of our graduations. They cry along with all of us as our young people make that change. And so they've been a great partner. The other partner, just briefly, is we have a local woman who is employed. She's a therapist, has been working with young people for 25 or 30 years, hugely committed. She was in on the ground floor when we started our program, working for an agency. She went on her own. She said, I want that kind of the mental health part of this, the support, counseling, listening, has been really great.
Well, our partners, and we have several unusual partners,
Sure
or
you do.
partners that have looked at us differently. One is Rural List, which is not an unusual partner.
Could you I would have interjected to say what LISC stands for. Remember.
Yes,
Local
Initiative Support Corporation.
Okay. There you go. Rural LISC.
And we've been partners, the agency had been partners with LISC since about 1995, but that was along our housing and economic sustainability for the community. And I remember sitting down with the Vice President, Suzanne Ornay, and the question was, is this something we really want to get into when we were entering the Aspen Opportunity Youth Incentive Forum, which was such a daunting process in the beginning, but very well worth it. And after sharing with her the need of the young people, because we were already running the Youth Build program, they bought in and they dug in, and they're our backbone and who keep us on track with this. So the other is our local law enforcement. The sheriff and the chief, they are bought in and they are partners. With speaking, with mentoring, with being involved with our young people. And that changes how our young people see law enforcement in our community. The other is our courts. I mean, I could tell you some stories about actually having to go and sit in a court and advocate for a young person. And we only do it for young people where we think absolutely, how do I phrase this? Where it was a moment of bad judgment and this opportunity needs to be there. And there's one where we had a young person who was facing 14 years of prison. And through that advocacy, that judge took a real different stance and ended up sending him to a program where he went for, I think, 6 months. And I'm proud to say that young man has been doing excellent with his opportunity and has communicated with the judge. So that the court system has been a great support. You mentioned Main Street. Those businesses looking at our young people and how they engage them as people to move their businesses forward, and they're not afraid to put them in leadership. Where you were trying to get me to, and I'm there now. We had one young person who went into a restaurant, and she started on the bottom level, and she actually became the She handled the cash and the deposits and the scheduling the employees, and was the best employee that this program could have hoped for. Some of our others that have come, Mars Food came and asked us to train. And again, they paid us for training their employees. So this was some economic support into our program to sustain us. There is no one who we won't ask, no one who is, so, I mean, I can go on with.
I think that's a great way to wrap it. There is no one I won't ask. I love that line. There is no one I won't ask. Shauna, do you have anybody that's an unusual partner at your table?
I would just say a critical partner is the 4 local universities that we work closest, not just for us, but all of the tribes in Idaho. They have really intentionally worked with all of the tribes to support unique needs of American Indian children in our area. And so we have American Indian advisory committees at all 4 universities. We have written MOUs that support our students in attending those universities. And then we've also worked with university development of their American Indian Studies program, creation of a nation building program, and then also in setting up the different, like Native American student centers, and all the different supports to the students have been a very critical piece.
Great. To follow up, use the memorandum of and what you might ask a university for, I think is another little bit of a mystery to a lot of youth organizations. Organization in getting your MOUs to look at what that relationship between you and the university was. Are you willing to share those? Would you be willing to do a template with people?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Can I plug in one other partner? Habitat
And then
for
we have to go to
Humanity.
questions because we've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
Okay.
I was going to say, Habitat for Humanity was one of our big partners, and we've built 7 houses today in partnership with them.
Yeah.
Terrific. So we're going to take questions in the room now, so you can raise your hand. But while we're doing that, I've got some from #Rural Innovation, the people out there. Just a quick one for Andrew. Andrew's been sitting there saying, how does Dr. Schaefer, I just want to say, how does Dr. Schaefer define rural in his data? Less than 10, I don't know, distance from nearest city? Less than 10,000 distance from nearest city? Could you quickly sort of do that for the people looking at the data?
Yeah, so it's based on the Office of Management and Budget definitions of metropolitan areas. I think, off the top of my head, I think it's places with less than 50,000 population, but also places that are not directly adjacent to a major city. And I have some great New Hampshire examples that will be lost on all of you. But it's Southern New Hampshire is really a suburb of Boston. A lot of people don't know that. But is technically like the city, even though most people, when they think about New Hampshire, think about kind of like a rural place. But it's because it's so close to the city, it's not rural in that way. So it's kind of this definition. It's really all we have with that data. There are better ones out there for sure.
My name is Tina Fletcher. I have the unique experience of living in Southeast Washington, D.C. and having taught at Anacostia, but I'm from a town in Arkansas with 850 people. So when I hear people say rural is less than 50,000, I always laugh. I am here today because I am currently doing education consulting work with my twin sister in rural Arkansas in Ashley County and Lee County, which is pretty close in our language to we are working with the school district to improve their because both of these schools have lost hundreds of students in the last 10 years. So for these communities, losing 500 students is part of the district. And my question is for you all related to economic development. I hear everyone talk about partnerships, and I think that's great and wonderful, but what we're seeing is that even though we're meeting with and the superintendent and parents and students in the chambers of commerce and Rotary, there is nothing in place to stop the people leaving because factories are closing. And we're in the Walmart state, which is also very interesting. But I'm wondering if you all have sat down with your governors or the members of city council or the mayor to really look at a 5 to 10 year plan for bringing jobs back or inviting new employers in, because that's where we're struggling with communities is how do we plan for those jobs 10 years from now. Students, we've surveyed students who 85% of the students say I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. And so just wondering if you guys have had those conversations.
Well, that's definitely a conversation. Actually, as we are here, our mayor is here in DC as well. And that's one of his focuses. That's a conversation going on consistently. And we're seeing happening as well. So the answer to that question is, how do we stop that? I don't know. I think we have to get creative, you know. And if I just had to, just my mind is that we've got to build the small mom and back. They are really, really the heart of, and have been in the past, the heart of building a community that is less than 50,000 people. And I really think that's the place we got to start.
Karen, do you have any thoughts? Or?
Well, just that I think we started thinking about the healthcare industry. We hadn't thought about it as an employer or as an economic driver prior to doing some research and realizing, okay, this big population is, they're going to need healthcare. People are retiring or coming back. They're going to need healthcare. There had been job, increases. It wasn't manufacturing. It wasn't in these kind of, hard economic development type jobs that we typically think of. So partly it was just looking around and seeing where is job growth, even if it isn't economic development, anchor institutions. We also had a growth phase with our little liberal arts college. It has enrollment of, but it came up from 500, so they had to hire more people. So that meant there were also more jobs of a variety there. But I would say the biggest strategy we're now involved in is we have a small business loan fund. And so we're trying to help young people who want to stay start their, create their own jobs and businesses. And that's been wildly successful. We're thinking, we will help create jobs by adding on to businesses that need financing. What we found is that a lot of the people we're lending to are under 40, have young children, newly married, and they want to stay, and college they want to stay. So that's been a big strategy for us.
Shonda, you're not obligated, but do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Probably not specifically, just because I think our focus right now is specific to tribal membership and just trying to get tribal members more in a position for leadership roles and taking more of the professional type positions within the tribal organization, having more STEM-related focus, things like that.
And Kathy, if I could just say, I mean, there's a twin issue here. There's how do you build a local economy and how do you help people be prepared to build a local economy. And we're focused today on that latter. But we've done lots of other sessions about innovations in rural economic development. So not to plug our own series, but you might want to go back and watch some of those. All right, I'm going to get to you, but I'm going to ask another question from, there actually are a number of these. Are there, and maybe any of you, are there current call centers in rural areas creating good paying jobs? Do any of you know any of those? Are there opportunities in renewable energy jobs in rural America that are in your regions? And also, is there evidence of the role in empowering opportunity youth? So if you can comment on any of those. I mean, certainly there are these opportunities. I'm not sure it's in these three places, but go ahead. Any of you have comments?
Well, I like the arts, and also this is going to be a little plug. One of the things that our agency do is we produce the world's oldest blues festival, which is the third Saturday in September in Greenville, Mississippi. However, that is more than a festival. It is about teaching and preserving the culture of the community. And there are jobs and opportunity in tourism that are available for young people that young people can be directed to. Again, that goes through, you keep hearing creative, and I just think we really just got to be creative and look deep and dive deep to find and create and put young people in them.
Karen or Shauna?
If she has to.
Good.
Okay, hi, sorry. Ann Yeoman, I sort of have a foot in the country. And so my question actually crosses over with this economic development, and I guess it's a question of sort of population density and critical mass. Because my county doesn't have as many people as Elkins, the whole county. So I have a two-part question. One is, have you taken advantage of or have plans to have your communities be able to explore the changes that technology allow? So more technology-based, internet-based, whatever kind of businesses for your young people. And the other, though, is where you don't have a critical mass in your county or in your city, but do any of you have experience, in effect, coordinating across multiple counties? I think you mentioned that you've been interested in 5 counties. So where you don't have enough people to really get something going in one county, can you organize and coordinate with multiple counties? So sort of two-part question.
First one is easy for me to answer because we've got broadband problems where I am. So the technology jobs are still a ways away. So, and I would say the multi approach I think is a really good one. We have a community health worker model we're now working on as part of that career trajectory for our med prep students. We have a care coordination program in senior rental housing. So we have 5 buildings in Randolph County, but 4 buildings and a supportive nursing home in another county, another rental building. These are all lower income, these is housing for lower income seniors. So you've got this opportunity to meet and get to know a lot of seniors and really help them with their chronic disease, self-management, and this paraprofessional, this certificate type of trained person can really make this amazing difference in the health of these older residents. But that would be an example of, where we have that program going in heavily in 2 counties. And, it's not like you need the permission of the county commission to cross the line, right? You just find that willing partner and kind of go from there.
Well, heck, you're going to another state.
Yeah, right.
for your community college.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
I have one question here that I think is Connie said you got to ask this one. So Connie's taken she's taken the questions from the. So up to 40% of homeless and runaway youth identify as LGBTQ, and can you address the connection between LGBTQ youth and opportunity youth? Do any of you have anything to offer on that?
Is that in relationships? Is that a data?
Well, I don't know. This is what the questioner said. Up to
okay.
40% of homeless and runaway identify as LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So is there an intersection between LGBTQ and opportunity youth?
This was my question, to be.
That was your
myself.
question?
My name is Nora Delury, and this was my question.
All right, go ahead.
I wasn't sure how I was supposed to, but yes. So what was the question about where the figure up to 40% of LGBTQ youth identify as homeless youth identify as LGBTQ youth?
So I'm just curious about the question itself.
Sure.
Is the question itself, what do we know about that population and whether or not they are disconnected? I can guarantee you.
Well, sure. I was just wondering, comment if there is any either data or intersections with the homeless and runaway youth population amongst disconnected youth, or maybe amongst rural disconnected youth Are we seeing correlations with that and LGBTQ youth?
Andrew, do you know of any data on
I don't know of any data on that.
But I will say that Andrew loves data queries.
Yeah.
So, so maybe that would be an interesting thing for us to do a query
Sure.
on.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe, what are you seeing in your programs? One, homeless and runaway, and two, LGBTQ.
Absolutely. I mean, there are higher numbers of homeless in our programs, and I guess when I'm speaking on services. I mean, our young people are there, and we do have LGBTQ youth, so that intersection is that they're served. I mean, so.
I think what I'll say in California, which is a county of 27,000 people totally in the county, what has been effective in that county is building up leadership from that community as a focal point to rally that community around. So we knew a couple youth who were opportunity youth, and what we did was we got them into positions where they were more visible and could then broaden that circle of communication with that population, and that's been successful, definitely.
Hi, I'm Amy Blair. I work here at the Aspen Institute, and my question is for you, Deontay. I think it took a lot of courage to go to Youth Build the first time, and I can't imagine the courage back the second time, and I really just want to tell you I'm impressed with that. But I have my question: what is the position you have right now, and what do you do at Youth Build now? What's your job, and how do you think about the future now? What you're working toward?
Well, right now I'm a construction training, but my job goes beyond that. Being a construction trainer, it's helping the youth strive for their goals, like I was saying, to be more active and finding what goals they need to reach. Whatever they get discouraged by, I can try to be there to help them move along. When they at Youth Build, when they go out to their environment or around other youth, know that they're changing first. Then when they go back out there, they have to know that they fall back into the same mind. So that's what I do. Thank you.
So you're the shoulder or the devil on their shoulder?
The enforcer.
So one other quick question, and then we've got a BAFO finish. Okay, so this came in from JAG, and actually you might all answer this. How does MACE, or how do any of you encourage opportunity youth to use their voice and become engaged and active voters, right? So that happens, but it doesn't just happen by itself. So what are any of you doing to sort of get involved?
Okay. So one thing, as a part of joining, our young people are required to register, but we wanted to take that a step further. There's education. Our circuit clerk comes in. We have one of the best political gurus who's a part of our program, who talks about the young people, and he makes politics fun and engaging and takes our young people places, and they explore, they touch it, they digest it. So it's really making it an intentional part of what we do. And he keeps them on task. He keeps them on task with that and out in the community.
Shauna, I think you also said that you had an active group of youth in civic and political endeavors. And how do they get supported in your community?
Well, specific initiatives I think about is one between the tribe and the school districts. We've had a couple really, I'm going to lose the word, for school funding. Levies, thank you. We've had we had in the past levies that did not pass, and we have a pretty reputed school, and so there was a huge camaraderie around passing the last couple levies, which really increase student involvement, and then the tribe's leadership and community as a whole had a really huge I Vote initiative this last presidential election around that time, and so the whole community really involved with different marketing strategies and who the tribe supports and why, which was also targeted with youth. We have a tribal youth council that supported those efforts as well.
Nice. Good.
And Youth Build USA also has a young leaders forum in which we have young leaders that come to DC and participate as well. And they're also now doing a rock the vote kind of thing that our young people get involved in. So Youth Build USA is a big part as well.
Terrific. Well, I'm going to have a few closing comments and logistics that are important, but you know, someone did ask this question, and I mentioned it earlier, is there evidence of the arts playing a role in empowering opportunity youth? And earlier we found out that in a role, and Deontay, he mentioned a little earlier that every morning when you come in, when you were a Youth Build sort of participant as opposed to sort of helping run the program, but you have to come in every morning and something happens, and one of the things you do is sing a song, correct?
Yes.
Would you be willing to share that song with us, Deontay?
Yeah.
All right. And what's the
song is now Faith of the Heart.
Faith of the Heart.
Hey, you want to stand
up? I'm good. I sung it. They wanted me to sing it back there, and I was like, you know, I just supposed to be telling the life story of what the song is. But when I sung the song, they said, "Oh, you gonna do that?" And so it's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long time. Now my time is finally near. I can see the change in the wind right. Nothing's in my way. No, they're not gonna hold me down no more. No, they're not gonna mind, 'cause I got faith in the heart. I'm going where it will take me. I got strength of the soul, and no one's gonna bend or break me, 'cause I got faith. I got faith. Faith of the heart.
Woo! Yeah!
All right, I told you to wait to the end, didn't I? So thank you all for coming today, both to the live event and to the live stream. We know that a healthy and more prosperous America requires a healthy and prospering rural America, and that won't happen without close attention to the range of innovation that's happening in rural and more savvy investment in rural America. So please stay tuned for our next America's Rural Opportunity Dialogue. We are still putting together the roster for the rest of the year, so watch your email. But for those of you who are looking for another rural live stream opportunity right away, please tune in tomorrow for the Aspen Summit on Inequality. This is an annual large event that happens here in DC that's a collaboration of all of our programs. And it's going to be live streamed tomorrow 9 to 4:30 on the Aspen Institute's main webpage. And relevant to what we talked about today, we have managed to get a session on there focused on rural broadband and the importance of rural broadband to opportunity and reducing inequality in rural America. And actually, Connie Stewart, who I introduced earlier, is a panelist speaking about that. If you only have time for that panel, it should be showing live streamed around between 10:30 and 11, somewhere in that pocket. So look for that. For now, set your hopes in spring and invest in rural America. Thank you. I'm sending that to the Voice of American Idol for one of those remote.
You ready to have your picture taken now, right? Yeah, you gotta get used to this now. You got a voice like yours. You're right in front of the logo, so make sure.